There was a man named Aunty who lived in a tiny village at the bottom of the famous hill of Ago. Aunty was a successful businessman who had been married to his wife for a considerable amount of time, but they were unable to conceive a child. This predicament greatly troubled Aunty. As a result, she went to seek counsel from her sister Ngozi, who suggested that her daughter Udodi should come live with Aunty to ease her of her worries. Udodi was just a little girl when she started living with her aunt. Aunty loved and treated Udodi like her own daughter. As years went by, Udodi grew into a beautiful young woman who her aunt Aunty loved dearly. One evening, Aunty summoned his wife to inform her of his intention to marry a second wife. This news devastated Aunty, but she accepted it, because she knew how important having children was to her husband. Little did she know that the girl her husband wanted to marry was her niece, Udodi. Aunty wanted to take Udodi as his second wife, but did not know how to break the news to Aunty. Therefore, he turned to her sister, Ngozi, for advice. Ngozi suggested that Aunty marry her daughter, Udodi, instead of a stranger. Ngozi had always been envious of her sister's husband, who was a very successful businessman. She saw this as an opportunity for her daughter to marry a successful man and benefit from his wealth. Aunty, who was desperate to have a child, agreed and made up his mind to marry Udodi. However, Aunty was completely unaware of this and only found out on the day of their wedding ceremony. This news broke her heart, and she confronted her sister Ngozi about the betrayal. Ngozi, on the other hand, laughed at Aunty and told her that she should be happy that Udodi was marrying her husband instead of a stranger. She showed no remorse for her sister as she cheered her daughter on and even encouraged Udodi to marry Aunty. Aunty couldn't believe that her own sister would betray her by allowing her daughter to marry her husband. Every day Aunty would lock herself up in her room and cry. She even stopped eating and soon lost a lot of weight. Udodi paid no attention to her auntie's suffering as she spent more time with Aunty, her new husband. She began to grow jealous at the thought of sharing her husband with her auntie. Soon after, Udodi got pregnant. Both her mother Ngozi and her husband jubilated. Months went by, and Udodi's pregnancy continued to progress. As her delivery date approached, she woke up one morning with a terrible dream. She shared the dream with her husband, that her aunt Aunty had tried to harm her unborn baby. Upon hearing this, Aunty kicked his wife out of the house. This was a devastating moment for Aunty, who couldn't believe that her niece would treat her so cruelly after all she had done for her in the past. Aunty felt betrayed by everyone in her life and decided to wander far away, seeking a place where she could escape from it all. A few weeks later, Udodi gave birth to a handsome baby boy named Odinaka. Aunty was overjoyed to finally become a father. As Odinaka grew up, he made friends of his own and his bond with his mother became stronger. One day, while Udodi was at home preparing dinner, she received news that her son was found unconscious in the forest. Without a second thought, she dropped everything and rushed to his side, desperate to wake him up from his deep sleep. Despite her efforts, Odinaka remained unresponsive, leaving Udodi feeling helpless and unsure of what to do. She turned to his friends for any possible explanations. To her surprise, they disclosed that earlier that evening, they had all stumbled upon a plate of food in the forest. Odinaka had eaten the food and subsequently fallen into a deep sleep. One of his friends, Chika, shared a tale that his grandfather had told him when he was a child. The tale was of a spirit that lived deep in the forest, which used food to take over the consciousness of people. Chika further revealed that once a person eats the food of the spirit, the person will be hypnotized and completely unaware of their surroundings. When Odinaka heard this tale, he began to laugh and told his friends that he would prove them wrong, that nothing of such nature exists. He grabbed the food and started to eat, but after taking a few bites, Odinaka suddenly slumped over and fell into a deep sleep. When Udodi heard this, she was devastated and decided to take her son home. Later that night, Aunty returned from his business and heard of what had happened to his son. He was confused and hoped that by morning Odinaka would wake up. Sadly, this hope was shattered as days went by and Odinaka was still in a deep slumber. It was at this point that Aunty decided to pay a visit to Chika's grandfather, hoping he could shed some light on how to reverse what had happened to his son. When Amechi arrived at Chika's house, he found Chika's grandfather outside the house. He introduced himself and went on to narrate what had happened to his son Odinaka. He asked him how they could reverse the curse. In a hushed voice, Chika's grandfather directed him to a powerful seer who had the ability to communicate with the ancient spirits. Amechi then went to the seer's house, and when he arrived, he met the seer who told him that the juice from a certain herb could actually cure his son and restore his consciousness. Amechi asked the seer where he could find the herb. The seer directed him to a distant village where it grows in abundance. He then returned home and told his wife all that had happened. Amechi made up his mind to travel to the village the following morning in search of the herb. Early in the morning, Amechi embarked on the journey. It took him several hours to reach the village. When he got there, he met a young lady who he asked about the herbs. She kindly led him to the house of a well-known farmer who cultivated the herb in the village. When they arrived at the place, Amechi met the farmer and explained all that had happened. The farmer had sympathy for him. The farmer asked Amechi to wait in front of his house while he quickly went to his farm to fetch the herbs. During this short wait, Amechi had an unexpected encounter with his first wife, Umkoli, who he hadn't seen in almost 2 decades. Both were taken aback by the unexpected reunion. Umkoli asked him what he was doing in her village. Just as Amechi was about to explain, the farmer returned with the herbs. It was at that moment when Amechi realized the farmer was Umkoli's son. What Amechi did not know was that when he sent Umkoli away from his house, Umkoli was already pregnant. She also did not know about the pregnancy until a few weeks later, and by that time she had already journeyed to a faraway village. Months later, she gave birth to their son and decided to raise him on her own. When Amechi heard this, he was overwhelmed with regret. He sincerely apologized to Umkoli and his son Chinedu and asked for their forgiveness. Amechi explained to Umkoli what had happened to his son Odinaka and why he had traveled so far in search of the herbs. It was quite unbelievable to Amechi that the woman he had rejected turned out to be the only one who could provide the help he needed to save his son. Amechi returned back to his village and gave his son the juice made from the herbs. Miraculously, Odinaka woke up from his deep sleep. Amechi then gathered his wife, Udodi, and his son to share everything that had transpired. He recounted how Umkoli and her son had saved Odinaka's life. Amechi also revealed a shocking truth that he had impregnated Umkoli before driving her away from his house. Umkoli had given birth to a son named Chinedu. Odinaka was thrilled to discover that he had a brother. However, Udodi couldn't contain her emotions and began to cry. She confessed how her mother, Ngozi, had coerced her into lying and falsely accusing Umkoli of being a witch. Because her mother was determined to ensure that her daughter, Udodi, took over her sister's house and marriage, Udodi was filled with remorse. She decided to visit Umkoli the next day to apologize for all her wrongs. The whole family journeyed to Umkoli's village to apologize for everything they put her through. They explained how Udodi's mother pushed her to do what she did, but Umkoli couldn't understand why her sister Ngozi hated her so much. However, she forgave them, and Odinaka had the opportunity to meet his brother Chinedu. He thanked Chinedu for saving his life, and they built a strong connection. They always made time to visit each other, even though their families lived apart. The rift between them was settled, and they lived happily ever after.